and welcome to the 5th episode of Wahconah Weekly. Today, we will be doing an interview with Mr. Robb, our principal.
Hello, I'm here with Principal Robb after the first week of the hybrid reopening to learn more about some of the specifics pertaining to this style of learning. First, there are a lot of restrictions at Wahconah in order to meet safety guidelines. What was your thought process behind some of those restrictions, like lunches, for example?
Yeah, lunches were probably, that was the thing I was most worried about and the thing that was probably most notable to students other than morning arrival. So I'll start with the big picture and work our way down. All of the things that we have had to do flow from the state guidance that we have to work within, and then the district level decisions that have to be made to move forward as a district. Then once that's all settled, it's handed off to the schools, and then the schools have to start making specific plans tailored to their schools. So lunch, for example, I'll kind of explain how we went through all of this. The state said kids can eat in their classrooms, shouldn't be a problem at all. But the problem is, what a lot of kids don't realize is that all this while, as we've gone through the summer, the school district and the teachers union has to have negotiations with one another to realize what's going to work for our district and in our schools. And one of the things that was negotiated is that lunches would not happen in the classrooms. That's fine with me. We weren't going to be able to have lunches in the classrooms anyway, because we don't have the staff to supervise them, because the teachers get a duty-free 30-minute lunch. So we immediately started thinking about, okay, well, where can we have lunch? We could have it in the cafeteria, obviously, right? We could have it in the gym, the lobbies, and the auditorium. Those were what was left. We socially distanced the cafeteria. We were able to get 50 desks in there, 6 feet apart. But if we are going to continue running 3 lunch waves at Wahconah, given there's about 250 students here for each cohort, that'd be about 80 or 90 kids per lunch. So the question is, okay, we can squeeze 50 into the cafeteria. Where are we going to put everybody else? So we ruled out the gym because picking up 30 to 40 desks and chairs after every lunch didn't seem to make much sense. We had to rule out the lobbies because A, they're not big enough, and B, that would be a fire hazard because of the entrance of the room, the school. I left the auditorium, and it's not the best solution in the world, but it's quite frankly the only one we have given the confines of what we're having to work within. But the thing I think about lunch, if I could just stick on that one for a minute, is I was shocked at how eerily silent it was. I like a noisy lunch. I like energy. I like noise. You guys know I play music in the halls in the morning and all that sort of stuff. So we're gonna find some ways to liven things up a little bit at lunchtime. And I also noticed on Thursday and Friday, everyone started to loosen up a little bit more as opposed to Monday and Tuesday already, and that's a good sign. So
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. Would you like to comment on the importance of the work that goes on behind the scenes?
yeah, so right after the 4th of July, the state came out with its guidance, and the state said you're going to have to create 3 plans. One plan is to have all 500 and something kids come back to the school and be able to socially distance 3 feet apart. Second plan, they said you got to create a plan to do something that we're doing now, hybrid. And then third plan, they said you have to create a remote plan. So it's important to understand that shortly after the 4th of July, we had to assemble what we called the reopening task force. And it's a cross-section of staff members here at Wahconah. And we had to create all 3 of those plans, 2 of which we've already used, right? The remote learning and then the hybrid, excuse me. So what we had to do in order to create those plans, because there was so much work that needed to be done, is we chose to break into 2 teams. So our task force was broken into a teaching and learning team that myself and Mr. Therian led, and an operations team to take care of all the logistical things that Mr. Messina and Mr. Shannon led. And we each had our own teams, and then we would come back together and we would actually present our plans to one another, each team's plans to one another, and then make tweaks along the way, and then eventually move forward. It's important to understand that those plans had to be handed off to our superintendent, who then had to hand it off to the state for approval. So what we're doing now is state approved. It's also been vetted by the Dalton Board of Health. So that's one thing that I want to mention behind the scenes. The other thing is I don't think students and families really understand what the teachers had to go through during the first 10 days of professional development. That was, I've called it teacher boot camp, and I really don't know what else to call it. They had to relearn how to do their jobs in 10 days. And that isn't over. So we're engaged in a great deal of what's called instructional coaching right now. That Mr. Therian is our school's instructional coach, and he has these 30-minute sessions once a week with teachers to basically start to refine the techniques that we've created and make tweaks along the way to make things as structurally sound as possible. So.
Well said. Now, when I returned to school, I definitely noticed a change in the school's atmosphere. So since you are the principal, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the environment of Wahconah during the hybrid learning.
I don't know how people are going to take this when I say this. I'm actually pretty upset that we're in this situation in the first place. And I don't mean that in terms of hybrid so much. I'm upset that the COVID situation is what it is that has forced us into this situation with hybrid. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole too much and say much more, but I think a lot of the situations we're dealing with now could have been prevented early on. But here we are. We've been given this situation. We've been handed this situation where we have to get everybody back to school. We have to teach. We have to learn. We're going to do it in a hybrid setting. So what we tried to do, as far as the school's atmosphere goes, what we tried to do is we tried to ask ourselves, well, what makes Wahconah? Well, we know what makes Wahconah, at least from a social sense, are the extracurricular activities, athletics, the dances and all those different things. So what our club advisors are doing is they're working on trying to recreate their clubs virtually. Our drama department's going to try to do that, for example. We're trying to offer as much athletics as we can and so on and so forth. And then in terms of the day-to-day in-school experience, we had to, number one, make sure that health and safety was the most important thing that even supersedes teaching and learning. Mm-hmm. But now that we're becoming a little more comfortable with it, we're going to try to embed at least some fun moments into the day. And we're going to be looking for students to give us feedback on that, but the staff's already thinking a lot about it. But I have to say that the health and safety piece just is going to remain the most important thing until the COVID situation gets under control.
Yeah.
Oh.
And finally, what do you think the silver linings to hybrid are, if any?
The hybrid setting is going to teach students, whether they like it or not or know it or not, about time management. I think the hybrid setting is also going to teach students about communication, the importance of communication, how to properly communicate, and that sort of thing. And I think that the silver lining in that is that I actually think that a lot of students are going to be better prepared in terms of life skills to go off to college and the workplace after high school. Okay, so that's a silver lining. I have to tell you, though, I'm struggling to find silver linings, but I'll give you another one. I think this has rattled everybody's comfort zones. I think we all have these comfort zones in life, whether it's in school or whatever. It's rattled everybody's comfort zones, and I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I think people are starting to realize that when you're in an emergency situation or a crisis situation, which we're in, you can't always have it your way. And while that's not fun in the moment, I actually think that's a good life lesson down the road. I've had to have some hard conversations with students and families about that, and we'll probably continue. And I think the last thing that's probably a silver lining is that although it's been hard, I think the teachers are learning some new and creative ways to implement instruction and deliver the curriculum that will probably never go away and might actually help enhance what we do. I'm still kind of stuck on the fact we shouldn't be here in the first place. This shouldn't be happening in the first place, but there are silver linings. Out of every crisis and emergency, historically speaking, there are silver linings and lessons learned. And I think that's what this is going to be in the long run.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Robb, for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media. This has been Maddy and Juli bringing you Wahconah Weekly.